The crystal cities of Kepler 442b glowed softly in the morning light of their twin suns. Admiral Zithara stood on the highest tower of the capital city, her translucent blue form catching the sunlight and breaking it into rainbow patterns. She watched the peaceful world below, where millions of her people went about their daily lives. The Zorathians had built their civilization on beauty and knowledge. Their cities grew like living crystals from the ground, each building shaped by thought and harmony. Gardens of singing plants filled the spaces between towers. Rivers of pure water flowed through channels carved with perfect precision. This was a world without war, without weapons, without fear. Zethara's people had spent 3,000 years learning the secrets of the universe. They could bend light itself to their will. They could grow ships from crystal seeds that would sail between the stars. They could speak mind to mind across vast distances, but they had never learned to fight. "Admiral," came a voice behind her. Isara turned to see Commander Velthan approaching. His crystal form was a deep green, and worry clouded his features. "We are receiving strange signals from the edge of our system." Zethara followed him to the communication center. The room hummed with soft energy as dozens of Zorathians worked at stations made of living crystal. The walls showed images of space around their world, peaceful and empty as it had always been. "Show me," Zethara said. Velthan touched a crystal panel, and the main display changed. Dark shapes moved at the very edge of their solar system, just barely visible. They were huge, larger than any ship the Zorathians had ever seen. And they were moving fast, heading straight for Kepler 442b. "How many?" Zethara asked. "We count at least 50 large vessels, Admiral. Perhaps twice that number of smaller ones." They appeared from nowhere, as if they came from the dark space between systems. Zethara felt a chill run through her crystal body. In all their years of space travel, the Zorathians had met many alien races. Some were friendly, some were distant, but none had ever shown aggression. The galaxy was a place of peace and learning. "Try to contact them," she ordered. "Use all frequencies. Perhaps they are travelers in need of help." For the next hour, the Zorathians sent messages in every language they knew. They offered welcome, food, fuel, anything the strangers might need. But the dark ships did not answer. They just kept coming, moving faster than anything should be. Able to move. Then the screaming started. It began as a whisper in the minds of the most sensitive Zorathians. A sound like metal tearing, like worlds dying, like the cry of something that should never have been born. The psychic scream grew louder as the dark ships came closer. Zethara watched in horror as her communications officers began to shake. Some fell to the floor, their crystal bodies flickering with pain. The sound was inside their heads, clawing at their thoughts like a living thing. "Get everyone away from the psychic arrays," she ordered. "Block all mental connections to the outer system." But it was too late. The scream was already there in all their minds, and with it came images. Terrible images of what the dark ships truly were. They were not ships at all. They were creatures. Living things the size of cities, with hulls of black metal grown over flesh that pulsed with alien life. Weapons sprouted from their bodies like tumors. Eyes the size of buildings stared out from their sides, filled with hunger that could never be satisfied. The Vraxx had found them. Zethara had heard stories of the Vraxx from traders who came from distant systems. They were whispered tales, the kind that spacers told to frighten children. A race of creatures that consumed everything in their path. They would devour entire worlds, adding the knowledge and flesh of their victims to their own bodies. Wherever they went, only silence followed. But the stories said they stayed in the dark regions of space, far from civilized worlds. No one believed they were real. Now Zethara knew the stories were true. and the Vraxx were coming for her people. Sound? The evacuation alarm, she ordered. Get every ship we have into space. We need to get our people away from the planet. Velthan's hands moved over the crystal controls. Throughout the city and across the entire planet, warning sounds began to ring. But they were not the harsh alarms that other races might use. The Zorathians had no experience with danger. Their warnings were gentle chimes, beautiful even in their urgency. It took precious time to explain to the population what was happening. The Zorathians had no word for invasion in their language. They had to use phrases like uninvited visitors with harmful intent and a need to relocate quickly for safety. Many did not understand. Some thought it was a drill or a mistake. First Zorathian defense ships rose from the planet's surface as the Vraxx fleet entered the outer system. They were beautiful vessels, grown from pure crystal and powered by captured starlight. Each one was a work of art, designed for exploration and peaceful contact with other races. Against the Vraxx, they were helpless. The leading Vraxx bioship opened fire when the defense fleet was still millions of kilometers away. The weapon was unlike anything in Zorathian experience. It was not a beam of energy or a physical projectile. It was something that reached out through space itself and touched the target directly. The first Zorathian ship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, broadcasting peaceful greetings and requests for dialogue. The next moment, there was only empty space and scattered particles. The second ship died as quickly as the first. Then the third. Zethara watched from her command. Sent her as half her defense fleet was destroyed in the first minute of contact. The surviving ships turned and fled toward the planet, their crystal hulls flickering with fear-induced light. Our shields, Velthan said, his voice shaking. Rays. Planetary shields. The great energy barrier that protected Kepler 442b from cosmic radiation and space. Debris began to form in the upper atmosphere. It was beautiful, like a soap bubble made of pure light. It had kept their world safe for 1,000 years. The Vraxx. Weapons cut through it like it was made of air. The first bombardment struck the northern continent. Cities that had stood for millennia vanished in seconds. Crystal towers that had taken centuries to grow were turned to dust. Millions of Zorathians died before they even knew they were in danger. Zethara fell to her knees as the psychic death scream of her people hit her mind. She could feel each life ending, each consciousness snuffed out by the hungry darkness of the Vraxx. Her beautiful, peaceful world was being murdered, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Admiral Velthan sighed, helping her to her feet. We have to evacuate the capital. The ships that can still fly are gathering at the spaceport. Zethara looked at the display one more time. The Vraxx fleet was spreading out, surrounding the planet. Some of the bioships were launching smaller vessels, landing craft filled with creatures that would hunt down any survivors. Send out a distress call, she said. All frequencies, all languages. Tell everyone in the galaxy what is happening here. Who will answer? Velthan asked. Who would help us? Zethara did not know. The Zorathians had few real allies. They had always believed their peaceful nature would protect them. Now that belief was proven wrong, and their world was dying, but she had to try. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone might hear their call. Someone might care that an entire race was being destroyed. As the Crystal City began to collapse around them, Zethara and her people ran for their lives, hoping that help would come before it was too late. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the U-East Defiant, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship was humanity's newest Dreadnought, a massive vessel built for one purpose: war. Its hull was thick armor, plating over a framework of reinforced steel. Gun turrets studded its surface like the spines of some mechanical beast. Inside, 15,000 crew members worked at stations designed for battle. The Defiant was conducting training exercises near the edge of human space. Chun watched her crew run through combat drills, testing every system on the ship. These were veterans, men and women, who had fought in a dozen conflicts across human space. They knew their business. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, "we're picking up a distress signal. Long range from outside human territory." Chun turned toward him. "What kind of signal?" "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. It's hard to understand, ma'am. The translation computers are having trouble with it. But it sounds like someone's under attack." Chun walked over to the communication station. The Defiant's computers were among the best in human space, loaded with every known alien language. If they were having trouble translating, the signal was from a race humanity had never met before. "Play it," she said. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then a voice came through. It was high and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But underneath the beauty, Chun could hear terror. Double quotes. Anyone who receives this message. Our world is under attack. Creatures from the dark. Please. Help us. We are dying. The message repeated in several languages Chun recognized, and in others she did not. Each version carried the same desperate plea for help. "Where's it coming from?" Chun asked. Torres checked his instruments. "The Kepler 442 system, Captain. That's Zorathian space." Chun knew about the Zorathians. They were a peaceful race of crystal beings who lived about 50 light years from Earth. Human diplomats had tried to establish relations with them several times, but the Zorathians had always politely refused. They considered humans too violent, too focused on military matters. They wanted nothing to do with Earth's warrior culture. "Sir," said Commander Jackson, Chun's first officer, "the Zorathians have never asked for help before. If they're sending out distress calls, it means they're in real trouble," Chun finished. She studied the star charts on her display. The Kepler 442 system was far outside human space, in a region that Earth had no formal claim to. No treaties required her to help. No orders from Earth Command told her to respond, but someone was dying out there. Chun had joined the Earth Navy 20 years ago, after the Mars Rebellion nearly tore human space apart. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, rebels on Titan, and alien raiders along the frontier. She had seen what happened when good people did nothing while innocents suffered. "Helm," she said. "Set course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum speed." "Captain," Jackson said quietly, "that's 3 jumps through uncharted space. If something goes wrong with the FTL drive, then we fix it and keep going," Chun replied. "Torres, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we're responding to a distress call. We'll report in when we can." "Sir, shouldn't we wait for orders?" Chun looked at him. "Lieutenant, there are 15,000 people on this ship. Every one of them swore an oath to protect the innocent and defend the weak. The Zorathians might not like us, but they're innocent. And right now, they need defending." The Defiant turned away from its patrol route and jumped to hyperspace. The ship shuddered as it entered the space between dimensions, where physics worked differently and distances became meaningless. In hyperspace, the Defiant could cross 50 light years in a matter of hours, but the route to Zorathian space was dangerous. There were no navigation beacons in the empty regions between human and Zorathian territory. No mapped safe passages. The ship would have to jump blind, trusting its computers to find a path through the twisted geography of hyperspace. Chun used the travel time to prepare her crew. She called her senior officers to the briefing room, a utilitarian chamber lined with displays and tactical stations. No artwork decorated the walls. No comfortable furniture made the space welcoming. This was a room built for making hard decisions. "What do we know about the attackers?" she asked. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, the ship's intelligence officer, pulled up data on the main screen. The distress signal mentioned creatures from the dark. That could mean raiders from outside the galaxy, or something from the unexplored regions of space. "What about the Zorathians' defenses?" asked Major Hayes, commander of the ship's marine contingent. "Minimal," Rodriguez replied. "They're a peaceful race. Their ships are designed for exploration and scientific research, not combat. They have some energy shields and basic defensive weapons, but nothing that could stop a serious attack." Chun studied the tactical display. "How many people live in their system?" "About 800 million on the main planet, Captain, plus research stations and orbital facilities. If their defenses have failed, double quotes Chun did not need him to finish. 800 million lives hung in the balance, and the Defiant was the only ship close enough to help. "Major Hayes," she said, "I want your Marines ready for anything. If we have to board enemy ships or evacuate civilians, I need your people prepared." "Yes, sir." "What kind of enemy should we expect?" "Unknown. But if they're attacking a peaceful race like the Zorathians, they're probably not interested in negotiation." The first hyperspace jump went smoothly. The Defiant dropped back into normal space in an empty system, alone among distant stars. The navigation computers quickly calculated the next jump, deeper into uncharted territory. The second jump was harder. Hyperspace currents in this region were unstable, twisted by the gravity of a nearby black hole. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, and several minor systems failed. But the Defiant held together, built tough enough to survive the journey. During the third jump, they started picking up more signals from Zorathian space. The distress calls were getting weaker, more desperate. Chun could hear the fear in the alien voices, even through the translation difficulties. "Captain," Tories called out as they prepared for the final jump. "I'm getting fragments of communication from the attack zone. The translation is rough, but I think the attackers are called the Vraxx." Chun felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard whispers about the Vraxx from deep space traders and scouts. They were stories told in bars on frontier worlds, tales of biomechanical horrors that consumed entire civilizations. Most people thought they were just legends. "Are you sure?" she asked. "No, sir. The signal is breaking up badly." "But that's what it sounds like." If the stories were true, the Zorathians were facing something far worse than raiders or territorial disputes. The Vraxx were supposed to be living nightmares, creatures that turned entire worlds into feeding grounds. "All hands, prepare for combat," Chun announced over the ship's intercom. "We are approaching a hostile situation. Battle stations." Throughout the Defiant, 15,000 crew members moved to their posts. Gun crews loaded the massive rail cannons. Fighter pilots ran to their craft. Marines checked their weapons and armor. The ship transformed from a vessel of exploration into an instrument of war. The final jump brought them to the edge of the Kepler 442 system. As soon as they dropped out of hyperspace, the ship's sensors began screaming warnings. System was full of wreckage. Pieces of crystal ships drifted in the void, their beautiful forms shattered in dark. Energy signatures showed massive explosions on the planet's surface. And moving among the debris were shapes that made Chun's blood run cold. The Vraxx were real, and they were exactly as terrible as the stories claimed. "My God," whispered Commander Jackson. Chun stared at the display, taking in the scale of the destruction. An entire civilization was being murdered, and they had arrived just in time to watch it happen. But the Defiant was not a ship built for watching. It was built for fighting. "All weapons, target the nearest enemy vessel," Chun ordered. Let's see if these things bleed. The used Defiant hung at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, like a metal predator studying its prey. Captain Chun stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display with growing horror. What she saw there challenged everything she thought she knew about warfare and life itself. The Vraxx ships were not ships at all. They were living creatures, each one the size of a human city. Their hulls were black as the space between stars, but Chun could see they pulsed with organic rhythm. Weapons grew from their sides like metal tumors. Eyes larger than football stadiums stared out from their surfaces, burning with an intelligence that was utterly alien. Jesus Christ, muttered Lieutenant Torres. Those things are alive. Chun had seen many horrors in her years of service. She had fought pirates who tortured their prisoners for fun. She had battled alien raiders who collected human skulls as trophies, but nothing had prepared her for this. The Vraxx were not just alien. They were wrong, as if they came from a universe where different laws of nature applied. Sensors, she called. Give me numbers. Ensign Kim worked frantically at her station. I count 47 large bioships, Captain. Each one is between 5 and 15 kilometers long. There are also smaller craft, maybe 100 of them. They're feeding. Chun looked closer at the display. Some of the Vraxx ships had extended long tentacles down to the planet's surface. The tentacles were pulling up chunks of matter, absorbing everything they touched. Cities, forests, even the crystal formations that made Zorathian architecture so beautiful. All of it was being consumed. They're eating the planet, Commander Jackson said, his voice hollow. Not just the planet, Kim replied. Look at this. She highlighted one of the smaller Vraxx vessels. It had captured a damaged Zorathian ship and was slowly dissolving it with acid secretions. As Chun watched, the bioship's hull began to change, taking on some of the crystal patterns from its victim. They adapt, Chun realized. They're not just destroying the Zorathians. They're learning from them, adding their technology to their own bodies. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Kumar, spoke up from his station. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet. The Vraxx are doing something to the core. Chun felt sick. They're going to consume the entire world. Every living thing, every piece of technology, every bit of knowledge the Zorathians ever had. On the main screen, she could see the few surviving Zorathian ships fleeing toward the outer system. They were beautiful vessels, their crystal hulls catching starlight and turning it into rainbow patterns. But they were also helpless. Their weapons could barely scratch the Vraxx bioships, and their shields offered no protection against the creature's adaptive weaponry. Communication from the Zorathian flagship, Torres reported. Put it through. The voice that came over the speakers was the same musical tone Chun had heard in the distress call, but now it was broken with despair. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Zathara of the Zorathian Defense Fleet. You must leave this system immediately. The Vraxx will consume you as they have consumed us. Chun activated the reply channel. Admiral, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earthship Defiant. We received your distress call. We're here to help. There was a long pause. When Zathara spoke again, her voice held disbelief. You are human? That's right. But humans are. Another pause. Your people refused our offers of cultural exchange. You said we were too violent for your society. Chun smiled grimly. Admiral, you have that backwards. You refused our offers because you thought we were too violent. And right now, that might be exactly what you need. Before Zathara could reply, the nearest Vraxx bioship turned toward the Defiant. The creature was massive, easily twice the size of Chun's Dreadnought. Weapon ports opened along its hull like hungry mouths. Energy began to build in its organic. Cannons. All hands, brace for impact, Chun ordered. Shields to maximum. Return fire. The Vraxx creature attacked with a weapon unlike anything in human experience. It was not a beam or a projectile, but something that reached through space, itself to touch its target. The energy struck the Defiant's shields and began to adapt, learning the frequency and composition of human defensive technology. But the Defiant's shields were not like Zorathian energy barriers. They were brute force constructions, layered fields of raw power designed to stop anything the universe could throw at them. The Vraxx weapon pushed against them, adapted to them, but could not break through. Shields holding at 80%, Kumar reported. Whatever that thing fired, it's trying to learn our technology. Then let's not give it time to learn, Chun replied. All batteries, open fire. The Defiant's main guns were rail cannons, massive magnetic accelerators that fired solid projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. They were simple weapons, based on principles that any species could understand. But they were also devastatingly effective. The first salvo struck the Vraxx bioship along its flank, the creature's living armor, designed to adapt to energy weapons. And exotic radiation had no defense against simple kinetic force. Chunks of organic metal were torn away, revealing pulsing interior organs. The bioship screamed. The sound came not through space, but through some psychic channel that bypassed the normal laws of physics. Every person on the Defiant felt it, a cry of pain and rage that seemed to claw at their minds. Several crew members staggered, clutching their heads. What the hell was that? Jackson gasped. Psychic attack, Chun replied, fighting off the mental intrusion through sheer force of will. The Vraxx communicate through some kind of hive mind. When we hurt one, they all feel it. The wounded bioship tried to retreat, but the Defiant's guns followed it. More railgun rounds tore into its hull, each impact sending fresh waves of psychic agony through the Vraxx fleet. The creature's adaptive systems were useless against the simple physics of metal traveling at tremendous speed. Captain Torres called out, "The other Vraxx ships are turning toward us." All of them. Chun looked at the tactical display. Every bioship in the system was abandoning its feeding to focus on the human vessel. She had gotten their attention, all right. Unfortunately, she was now the target of 46 creatures that each outweighed her ship by a factor of 10. "Admiral Zithara," she called over the communication channel. "This would be a good time for your ships to get clear. We're about to get very busy." "Captain Chun," a Zorathian replied, "your vessel cannot possibly survive against so many Vraxx. Why are you doing this?" Chun watched the enemy bioships closing in, their organic weapons charging for another attack. Her ship was outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that could adapt to any tactic she used. By all reasonable calculations, the Defiant was about to be destroyed. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said simply. The Vraxx fleet opened fire as one, dozens of adaptive weapons reaching out to tear the human ship apart. But Chun was not planning to fight a defensive battle. The Defiant was built for aggression. And aggression was exactly what the situation called for. "All ahead full," she ordered. "Take us into the middle of them." "Captain?" Jackson stared at her in disbelief. "The Vraxx adapt to whatever we throw at them," Chun explained as the ship accelerated toward the enemy fleet. "So we're going to throw everything at them at once. If they want to learn how humans fight, let's give them a complete education." The Defiant plunged into the heart of the Vraxx formation, like a spear thrust into the body of some great beast. Its guns fired continuously, switching between rail rounds, plasma bolts, and nuclear missiles in random sequence. Each time the Zyas bioships began to adapt to one weapon type, the humans switched to another, but the real surprise was still to come. As the Defiant reached the center of the enemy formation, Chun gave the order that would either save them or destroy them all. "Launch all fighters. commenced boarding operations. Human fighter craft swarmed out of the Dreadnought's bays, tiny compared to the massive bioships, but fast and deadly. Behind them came assault shuttles, filled with Marines in powered armor, heading directly for the Vraxx vessels that no species in the galaxy had ever tried to board a Vraxx bioship. The creatures were living nightmares, filled with acid and organic weapons. To enter one was considered certain death. But humans had a saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. The Marines were about to test that philosophy against the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known. The first boarding shuttle hit the side of a Vraxx bioship like a bullet striking flesh. Marine Sergeant Rita Vasquez felt the impact through her powered armor as the shuttle's breaching charges blew a hole in the creature's living hull. Acid sprayed from the wound, but her armor's coating turned it aside. Go, go, go. She shouted into her comm unit. 12 Marines poured out of the shuttle into the nightmare interior of the Vraxx vessel. The walls were not metal or plastic, but something that pulsed like a heart. Organic cables hung from the ceiling, carrying fluids that glowed with sickly light. The air was thick with chemicals that would have killed an unprotected human in seconds, but the Marines were not unprotected. Their armor was the best human technology could build, designed to keep them alive in the most hostile environments imaginable. Vacuum, radiation, acid, fire. Nothing the universe could throw it. Them would stop a human Marine in full gear. Ugly place, muttered Corporal Zhang, sweeping the area with his plasma rifle. Smells like a slaughterhouse. Stay focused, Vasquez replied. She checked her tactical display, looking for the best route to the bioship's vital organs. Intel says these things have multiple brain clusters. We need to find them and shut them down. The Marines moved deeper into the creature, following passages that curved and twisted like arteries. The walls tried to close around them, but plasma fire and shaped charges kept the path open. Behind them, acid began to seal the wounds they had made. They were not the only boarding party. All across the Vraxx fleet, human Marines were forcing their way into bioships that had never been invaded before. It was a tactic that no other species would have attempted, because no other species was crazy enough to think it might work. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Chun watched the battle unfold on multiple screens. Her ship was at the center of a swirling combat that covered millions of cubic kilometers of space. Vraxx bioships moved like living mountains, their weapons reaching out to crush the tiny human vessel. But the Defiant refused to die. Shields down to 40%, Kumar reported. Hull breaches on decks 12 and 15. Damage control teams responding, Jackson added. We've lost 2 main gun turrets, but the rail cannons are still firing. Chun nodded, her attention focused. On the tactical display, the Vraxx were adapting to human weapons, but slowly. Each time they figured out how to counter one attack, the humans switched to something else. Railguns gave way to plasma cannons, which gave way to nuclear missiles, which gave way to kinetic impactors. Captain, Torres called out. We're getting reports from the boarding teams. They're inside the bioships. On screen 3, Chun could see helmet camera footage from Sergeant Vasquez's team. The Marines were fighting their way through what looked like the inside of a living nightmare. Organic defenders tried to stop them. Creatures they were part. Machine, part flesh, all horror. But human weapons and human determination were winning. There. Vasquez's voice came over the comm. Found one of the brain clusters. Chun watched as the sergeant's team entered a chamber filled with pulsing neural tissue. The walls were covered with what looked like a cross between computer circuits and nerve endings. This was the creature's mind, the part that controlled its weapons and movement. Light it up, Vasquez ordered. Plasma fire filled the chamber, burning. Through organic computers that had been grown rather than built. The bioship's psychic scream echoed through space as part of its brain died. On the Defiant's tactical display, Chon watched the creature's movement become erratic, its weapons firing wildly. "One down," she said with satisfaction. "How many more boarding teams do we have in action?" 37 shuttles launched, Kumar replied. "Most have made successful breaches. The Vraxx don't seem to know how to fight enemies inside their own bodies." It was true. The bioships had been designed to fight other spacecraft, not to repel boarders. Their internal defenses were minimal, mostly organic antibodies that were useless against armored humans. The Marines were rampaging through. The creature's vital organs like a virus, the Vraxx. Immune system could not fight, but the external battle was getting harder. The remaining bioships had adapted to most of human weaponry, their hulls changing to deflect railgun rounds and absorb plasma fire. Worse, they were learning to coordinate their attacks, using their hive mind to focus fire on the Defiants. "Weak points, Captain," Jackson said quietly. "We can't keep this up much longer. They're getting smarter." Chun knew he was right. The Vraxx were learning human tactics faster than humans could develop new ones. In a few more minutes, they would have adapted to everything the Defiant could throw at them. That was when the Zorathian ships joined the battle. Admiral Zethara's flagship approached the combat zone cautiously, followed by the handful of vessels that had survived the initial attack. The crystal ships were damaged, their hulls cracked, and their weapons barely functional. But they were still capable of fighting. "Captain Chun," Zethara's voice came over the comm. "Our sensors show that your boarding parties have disrupted several Vraxx bioships. If you can create an opening, we can strike at their weak points." Chun felt a surge of hope. "What do you need us to do?" "The Vraxx adapt to individual weapon types, but they have trouble with rapid changes in attack patterns. If you can force them to focus on multiple threats simultaneously ... double quotes, Chun understood immediately. A coordinated strike. We keep them busy while you hit them where it hurts. Precisely. But it will require perfect timing. Chun looked around her. Bridge at the faces of her crew. They were tired, bloodied, but not beaten. These were the men and women who had followed her into hell, trusting her to bring them out again. "All stations," she announced, "prepare for final assault. We're going to end this." The plan was simple in concept, devastating in execution. The Defiant would charge directly at the largest Vraxx bioship, forcing the entire enemy fleet to focus their fire on the human vessel. At the critical moment, the Zorathian ships would attack from a different angle, striking at the brain clusters that controlled the creature's adaptive systems. It was a suicide run. The Defiant could not possibly survive the concentrated fire of 40-plus bioships. But if the timing was perfect, if the Zorathians struck at exactly the right moment, they might be able to cripple the Vraxx fleet before the human ship was destroyed. "All power to forward shields," Shen ordered. "Take us straight at the big one." The Defiant accelerated toward the largest bioship, a creature 15 kilometers long and bristling with organic weapons. Every gun on the monster turned toward the approaching human vessel. Energy discharges that could crack planets focused on a single target, but the human ship did not die easily. Its shields flared and sparked under the assault, but held together through sheer brute force engineering. Railgun turrets continued firing, even as the ship's hull began to buckle. Fighter craft swarmed around the bioship like angry wasps, their weapons adding to the chaos, shields failing. Kumar shouted over the din of combat. "Hull breaches on multiple decks." "Hold together," Shun ordered, as much to her ship as to her crew. "Just a little longer." The Defiant was dying. Its armor was being stripped away, layer by layer, its weapons falling silent one by one. But it had done its job. Every Vraxx bioship in the system was focused on the human vessel, their adaptive systems working frantically to counter the strange. New threat. That was when the Zorathians struck. Admiral Zethara's ships came in from 3 directions at once, their crystal hulls gleaming in the light of weapons fire. Their guns were not as powerful as human weapons, but they were precisely targeted. Each shot struck at the exact locations where Sergeant Vasquez and her fellow Marines had damaged the bioships. Brains. The effect was devastating. Bioships that had been adapting to human attacks suddenly found their control systems destroyed. They thrashed wildly, their weapons firing at random. Some collided with each other, their massive hulls tearing great wounds in their neighbors. "It's working," Torres called out. "The Vraxx fleet is breaking apart." Chun allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she watched the enemy formation dissolve into chaos. But the moment was brief. The Defiant was still dying, and the largest bioship was still very much alive and very angry. "Captain," Jackson said, his voice calm despite the destruction around them. "We've lost main power. Life support is failing. We need to abandon ship." Chun looked at the tactical display one more time. Most of the Vraxx fleet was crippled or destroyed. The surviving bioships were fleeing toward the edge of the system. The immediate threat to the Zorathian world was over, but the war was far from finished. "All hands," she announced over the ship's failing communication system. "Prepare to abandon ship. It has been an honor serving with you." As evacuation pods began to launch from the dying Dreadnought, Chun stayed on the bridge, watching the stars. Through a cracked viewport, somewhere out there, more Vraxx fleets were waiting in the dark between systems. This battle was won, but the real war was just beginning, and humanity would be ready for it. The rescue shuttle from Admiral Zethara's flagship found Captain Chun floating in her evacuation pod 3 hours after the Defiant died. The human Dreadnought had finally succumbed to its wounds, breaking apart in a shower of metal and plasma. That lit up the Kepler 442 system like a second sun. Chun felt the gentle hum of Zorathian technology as the crystal ship's tractor beam pulled her pod into its docking bay. She had expected to die with her ship, but her crew had overridden the pod's manual controls and ejected her by force. Command officers did not abandon their vessels, but sometimes their vessels abandoned them. The docking bay was unlike anything in human experience. The walls were grown rather than built, formed from living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The air smelled of flowers and ozone, clean and pure after the smoke and burning metal of the battle. Zorathian crew members moved with fluid grace, their translucent bodies catching and reflecting the ambient illumination. Admiral Zethara herself was waiting as Chun climbed out of the pod. The Zorathian leader was tall and elegant, her crystalline form a deep blue that shifted to purple in the light. Her face, while alien, showed expressions that Chun could recognize: relief, gratitude, and something that might have been wonder. "Captain." "Chun," Zethara said, her voice still carrying that musical quality despite the exhaustion in her tone. "I am in your debt. My people are in your debt." Chun looked around the docking bay, taking in the alien architecture and the strange beauty of Zorathian technology. "How many of your people made it out?" 640 million, Zethara replied. "The Vraxx consumed much of our world, but your sacrifice gave us time to evacuate the major population centers. Without your intervention, all would have been lost." The number was staggering. Chun had never been responsible for saving so many lives before. The mathematics of warfare usually dealt with smaller figures: ships destroyed, battles won, tactical objectives achieved. This was different. This was an entire civilization pulled back from the edge of extinction. "What about my crew?" Chun asked. "Most survived. Your escape pods were well designed, and we recovered them quickly. Some of your Marines are still aboard. The bioships they captured securing the vessels for study. They refuse to leave until the job is complete. Chun smiled despite her exhaustion. That sounded like her Marines. They would stay in hell itself if they thought they could learn something useful from the experience. "Admiral," she said, "we need to talk. The Vraxx aren't gone. This was just one fleet. There will be others." Zithara nodded, her crystalline features becoming somber. "Yes, our long-range sensors detect movement in the dark regions of space. The Vraxx are gathering, preparing for a larger assault. They will come again, and next time they will be ready for human tactics." She gestured toward the bay's exit, inviting Chun to follow. "But first, you must see what your sacrifice has accomplished." They walked through corridors that curved like the inside of a living shell, past chambers filled with rescued Zorathians, who stared at Chun with a mixture of fear and fascination. These beings had lived their entire lives in peace, never knowing violence beyond what they read in history books. The sight of a human warrior, still in her damaged uniform, was as alien to them as the Vraxx had been. The observation deck offered a view of the entire system. Kepler 442b hung in space like a wounded jewel, its surface scarred by Vraxx, feeding tentacles, but still beautiful. Debris from the battle drifted in slow orbits around the planet, pieces of bioships, fragments of crystal vessels, and the scattered remains of the Defiant. But it was not the destruction that caught Chun's attention. It was what was being built. Zorathian construction ships were already at work, growing new defensive platforms in orbit around their world. The structures were different from the elegant spires that had been destroyed. These were harder, more angular, designed for war rather than beauty. Human engineering principles were evident in their design. Redundant systems, heavy armor, weapons that could adapt to any threat. "You're militarizing," Chun observed. "We are learning," Zethara corrected. "For 3,000 years, we believed that peace was the natural state of the universe. We thought that beauty and knowledge would protect us from harm. The Vraxx taught you as otherwise." She pointed to one of the construction sites, where a massive railgun was being installed on a crystal framework. "Your people understand something that we forgot, that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be prepared for war." Chun watched the work proceeding below. It was strange to see Zorathian technology being used to build weapons, but she understood the necessity. The galaxy was not the peaceful place the crystal beings had believed it to be. There were predators in the dark, and prey needed teeth to survive. "There's something else," Zethara continued. "During the battle, our scientists analyzed the Vraxx. Bioships. What we found, it changes everything." She led Chun to a research facility that had been hastily set up on the flagship. The chamber was filled with pieces of Vraxx technology, chunks of living metal, fragments of organic computers, samples of the acid that served as their blood. Zorathian scientists worked over the samples with an intensity that Chun had never seen from the normally peaceful race. "Show her," Zithara instructed one of the researchers. The scientist, a thin Zorathian whose crystal form was pale green, activated a holographic display. The image showed the internal structure of a Vraxx bioship, with various systems highlighted in different colors. "The Vraxx are not a single species," the scientist explained. "They are a collective, a hive mind made up of dozens of conquered races. Look here." He pointed to a section of the display that showed neural tissue. "These patterns are familiar. We have seen them before in the ruins of the Kethver civilization. And here, these organic circuits match technology found in Yelani space. The Vraxx are not just destroyers, they are collectors. They consume civilizations and add their knowledge to their own." Chun felt a chill run down her spine. "How many civilizations have they absorbed? We estimate at least 40, possibly more. Each conquest makes them stronger, smarter, more adaptable." They are the accumulated knowledge and resources of half the galaxy, all twisted toward a single purpose: consumption. The implications were staggering. The Vraxx were not just another alien threat. They were the accumulated nightmare of every species they had ever destroyed, a constantly growing cancer that consumed everything in its path. But there is hope, Zathara said. The battle showed us something important. The Vraxx can adapt to any single threat, but they have trouble with rapid changes in tactics. Your human doctrine of overwhelming firepower, combined with our precision targeting, was more effective than either approach alone. Chun began to understand what the Zorathian was suggesting. You want an alliance. More than that. We want to combine our civilizations, at least for military purposes. Zorathian technology guided by human tactical doctrine. Your weapons powered by our energy systems. Your marines protected by our shields. It was a revolutionary idea. Humans and Zorathians had always viewed each other with suspicion, if not outright hostility. The crystal beings saw humans as violent primitives, while humans saw Zorathians as weak pacifists. But the Vraxx threat changed everything. What about your people? Chun asked. Will they accept human military advisors? Human weapons on their worlds? Zathara's expression became grim. 640 million Zorathians are alive today because a human captain decided to answer our distress call. Because human marines were willing to board Vraxx bioships that no sane being would enter. Because a human crew sacrificed their ship to save a world they had never seen. She turned to face Chun directly. My people may have preferred peace, Captain, but they are not fools. They understand that sometimes peace must be fought for. Over the following days, as rescue operations continued and the extent of the damage was assessed, Chun watched two civilizations begin to merge their military capabilities. Human survivors worked alongside Zorathian engineers, sharing knowledge that had been kept separate for decades. The crystal beings learned about redundant armor and kinetic weapons, while humans discovered the secrets of energy manipulation and adaptive shielding. It was not always an easy process. The two species had very different approaches to problem solving. Humans favored brute force solutions and redundant backups, while Zorathians preferred elegant designs and efficient systems. But gradually, a new hybrid technology began to emerge. The first joint patrol ship was launched 2 weeks after the battle. It looked like nothing either species had built before. A crystal hull reinforced with human armor plating, powered by Zorathian energy cores, and armed with human weapons. It was beautiful and deadly, a perfect fusion of two philosophies of engineering. What do we call it? Chun asked as she and Zathara watched the ship's maiden voyage from the observation deck. Hope, the Zorathian replied. We call it hope. Chun nodded, understanding. The ship represented more than just a new weapons platform. It was proof that different species could work together, that the galaxy's civilizations did not have to face the Vraxx threat alone. But even as she watched the new vessel take its place in the growing defense fleet, Chun knew that the real test was still to come. The Vraxx.